looking at your fears as an opportunity to grow and thrive.
The idea that genes turn on and off by themselves is a complete fabrication. It's not true at all.
The number one toxin in the room is emotional trauma. It's kind of hard to escape life without trauma.
They were going to call it a magic bullet, a biological response modifier, they called it. We've got them.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Conquering Cancer docuseries, The Missing Link. I'm your host, Nathan Crane. Some of you may know me from my award-winning documentary, Cancer, The Integrative Perspective. Others of you have attended the Conquering Cancer Summit or Global Cancer Symposium or conferences that I've hosted over the years, or maybe you're a member of my Health and Healing Club. Others of you don't know me at all and are brand new to the Conquering Cancer community. Either way, I'm honored and excited to welcome you to this groundbreaking documentary series, which is honestly my most impactful and transformational series yet. The truth is, I know how scary and painful it is to be sick and dying, and I know how devastating it is to lose someone from cancer. I lost my grandfather to cancer and felt hopeless as I watched him suffer the painful treatments that he endured. And even before that, I had my own near-death experience living homeless as a teenager in Bozeman, Montana, struggling with addiction, sickness, pain, and suffering. I also know that it's possible to reclaim your health, find purpose and meaning in life, experience a heightened level of vitality, and even reverse cancer using holistic approaches. And that's why I'm excited you're here with me during this series. No matter how you got here, it's likely for one of 4 reasons. 1, you or a close friend or family member currently has cancer and you want to learn the best ways to heal from it. Or 2, you're a cancer survivor who wants to do everything in your power to stop cancer from ever coming back. Or the 3rd reason, you might be somebody who wants to understand how to prevent cancer from forming in the first place. This is vitally important because as the statistics show, 1 in every 3 women and 1 in every 2 men will be impacted by cancer in their lifetime. Or the 4th reason is that you're a healthcare practitioner who really cares about your patients and wants to learn what more can be done to facilitate healing from cancer. No matter your personal relationship to cancer, I welcome you, and I guarantee that throughout our time together over the next 9 episodes, you're going to come away educated and empowered as you discover the shocking, often overlooked causes of cancer, and more importantly, how the body is able to heal itself. We're calling this documentary series The Missing Link, because we dive much deeper than ever before in any of my previous cancer series into that overlooked ingredient of healing that is common in the people who not only survive cancer, but end up thriving. For some of you, the idea of having a better life after being diagnosed with cancer may seem impossible, but I assure you that it's not. And I'm happy that you're going to meet some incredible, courageous cancer conquerors who share exactly what they did and what they learned from their cancer experience. For those of you who want the more practical, hands-on, nuts and bolts formula for recovering from cancer and even avoiding it in the first place, don't worry, we've got plenty of that too. Throughout this series, you'll meet leading experts in their field who've been working hands-on with patients for decades. They've collectively treated and impacted the lives of hundreds of thousands of people through their clinical practice and through the dozens of books that they've written. And it isn't just cancer that their patients are preventing and healing from. What you'll learn will also help you prevent and even reverse chronic diseases such as heart disease, autoimmune disease, and even diabetes. What we've done with this documentary series is we've extracted and then organized this wealth of knowledge in a way to help you get the most from it. We've focused in on the most important, beneficial, life-saving elements that everyone needs to know to live a long, healthy life. So once again, I want to thank you for being here. I can't wait to get started. Let's jump into episode 1. You know, despite the billions of dollars invested in the war against cancer and all the modern medical equipment that's now available, people seem to be sicker than ever. Why is that? Could it be that our modern day medical system is actually set up in a way that ensures a steady stream of patients? What is it that doctors aren't learning in medical schools that will actually help their patients heal? In this episode, we're exploring the limitations of our current medical approaches to cancer, but we're also looking at the hidden opportunities for preventing and healing cancer and other chronic diseases. So I'm really happy you're joining us. Let's dive in. Dr. Jen Simmons was trained in conventional Western medicine and spent the first 17 years of her career as one of the country's top breast cancer surgeons. When she became ill in 2015, she discovered that conventional medicine didn't provide the level of care that she needed or wanted. Her own search for answers led her to functional medicine. She became so enamored with the prospect of preventing and reversing disease rather than masking symptoms that she left her prestigious position in 2019 to start Real Health MD, a functional medicine oasis for those affected by breast cancer. Her course, My Answer to Breast Cancer, helps motivated women put their breast cancer diagnosis behind them by providing the tools they need to build real health. In this interview with Dr. Jen, you'll hear about her own experience, how it opened her eyes to critical learning that she never received in medical school, and the underlying causes of cancer that she never even knew about as a cancer surgeon. So, going from a breast cancer surgeon to a functional medicine doctor, I mean, that's a huge shift. I've met a handful in my life so far who were either conventional oncologists or conventional medical doctors who had some major aha moment, awakening moment that said, look, this is not what I thought it was. And then they went down and then they became either a functional medicine doctor or a holistic medical doctor, or completely scrapped their medical license altogether and just dove deep into holistic medicine. I think we're starting to see this more and more for various reasons, but I'd love for you, if you take a moment, what was that big shift for you? Was it the autoimmune disease? And how did that whole shift happen?
So, my friend once told me he wanted to understand the story. And he said, so you're driving down the Autobahn in your Porsche and you pull over, get out of your car and get into a Prius. Like, what's up with that, right? So, I went into medicine and breast surgery very, very intentionally. So my first cousin was a woman named Linda Creed. Linda was a singer-songwriter in the 1970s, 1980s. She wrote all of the music for the Spinners and the Stylistics. She and her writing partner, Tommy Bell, they wrote like 54 hits in all, but the most famous song that she wrote was The Greatest Love of All. So she wrote that in 1977 as the title track for the movie The Greatest, but it really got its fame from when Whitney Houston released it in March of 1986. And there it spent 14 weeks at the top of the charts, but Linda would never know that because at 36 years old, Linda died of metastatic breast cancer. And she was like my hero. And so that other people's families did not have to have the experience that my family had, the only thing I knew how to do, I became a breast surgeon to try to make an impact in that world. And I did it really well for a long time. And in addition to being a surgeon, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an athlete, I'm a philanthropist, and I'm keeping all of these balls in the air. And then in 2015, they all went crashing to the ground. Like I lost my health. And I'm sitting there in my doctor's office and I have an autoimmune disease of the thyroid called Graves' disease, and it's treated exactly like cancer. For all intents and purposes, that's how it's treated. So I'm sitting there listening to him tell me that I need surgery and I need radiation and I need lifelong thyroid replacement hormone. And it's like Charlie Brown's teachers in my ear, right? All I hear is womp, 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 womp. And, these are things that I tell people to do every single day without hesitation, without reservation. Like, don't even think about it. Of course you should have your breast removed. Of course you should get chemotherapy. Of course you should get radiation. Right. But then when it's coming at me, I'm like, just hang on a second, because I don't see why God would give me an organ that I'm just to remove and then replace with some artificial drug. Right?
So that thought never came to you before when working with your patients, doing surgery on your patients. It only came to you in that moment when it was faced for your own body.
Yep.
Wow.
Which now my woke self is a little embarrassed, but I also didn't even know what functional medicine was.
Right.
And so in the course of my disease, as I'm like having horrible insomnia and I'm up all night on Dr. Google, which is, what I tell everyone not to do, but that's what I did. And I'm researching how to cure thyroid disease. And it comes up again and again, diet, 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 diet. And here I am thinking like, well, I'm a doctor. I'm not overweight. I must know everything there is to know about nutrition. And then I'm like, well, maybe I don't. So I enrolled in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I was going to learn more about nutrition, learn more about diet, and hopefully I'll be able to heal myself. And it was one of the very first lectures, and a man comes up on the stage. His name is Dr. Mark Hyman, introduces himself and says he's a functional medicine doctor. Now here I am thinking that I'm some big mahath. I'm this big surgeon, and I've been practicing for 17 years at that point. I never heard of a functional medicine doctor. What is a functional medicine doctor? And so I'm in my mind opening phase of my life, right? I'm wanting enlightenment, and I start to listen to him talk about what it means to be a functional medicine doctor. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, of course. This is my calling. This is why I got sick, because I was meant to learn about this. I was meant to do this. This is what I was meant to do. Like, I had never felt so right until that moment.
Do you remember what he said that sparked that within you so powerfully, or roughly some of the concepts that he talked about?
Oh no, I remember exactly. So he's talking about 84% of Americans are metabolically abnormal, and that 80% of chronic disease is attributed to diet, and 800,000 Americans die a year due to food-related illnesses. And I'm picturing the parade of my patients, and they're getting younger and younger and younger, and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, that's it. It's the diet. It's the diet. Now, of course, it's not only the diet, because we have a lot of problems in our food system. The quality of the food is one, but there's a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, antibiotics. Like, there are a lot of problems deeply ingrained in our food system. But it occurred to me in that moment that, like, I was on the wrong end of things. Me cutting out the tumor doesn't do anything to change the trajectory of their lives. It doesn't address why they got cancer, and it doesn't help them to not get cancer afterwards. All I'm doing is prolonging the inevitable and leaving a pretty big scar behind. And I was an oncoplastic surgeon. Like, I thought I was offering people this great silver lining where I was gonna, what don't you like about your breast? Let's fix it this time around. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? No, I did the best I could with the information that I had. I was very, very, very well intentioned, but I wasn't helping.
When you went to medical school, did they talk to you at all about natural medicine, holistic medicine, good or bad? I mean, did they talk about it at all? Did they dissuade you from it? Did they tell you there's no science to support it? Did they never even mention it? Diet, lifestyle, nutrition, natural medicine, all these things. What did you hear about it in medical school?
So in medical school, I went to Jefferson, and I think that Jefferson is one of the first medical schools in the country to have an integrative medicine department. But what that meant to me, at least my understanding, I mean, none of us ever rotated through there. It was always considered like a little bit on the side in obscurity. And, what it essentially meant to all of us was, oh yeah, that's like a primary care doctor who also believes in acupuncture, or some kind of adjunctive thing that was put on top of or added to the traditional medical model. And I think that that's how it operated there for a long time. I think that they're making strides to change that now. But as a medical student, we really weren't introduced to any integrative therapies. You really had to go seek it out. And as far as our education around nutrition, we did the minimum. So in your first year of medical school, you have 1 week where you meet 3 hours a day and talk about nutrition. And the focus is on like things that we don't see anymore, scurvy, rickets, those kinds of things. PKU in newborns, obscure diseases, but never was there a conversation about what your body needs, how to nourish, how to heal. There was no conversation around that. And I'm pretty sure by and large that still exists today.
Why do you think that is?
I think that doctors are really uncomfortable with not being needed. And I know that's like a horrible thing to say, but I think that they want to think that they're integral in the process and like there's some magic there that they're offering. And it makes them really uncomfortable for people to say like, no, I can do that myself somehow.
Why do you think the medical schools themselves are not teaching this to the medical students? I mean, I know medical students who have reached out to me and said things like, yeah, in our medical school, they have told us that natural medicine has no science to support it, and that they completely are dissuaded from even researching it and to stay away from it completely. I mean, I have, theories and history and a deeper, belief and perception of why this is, but I want to know why you think it is.
So I'm going to tell you what I think. Doctors think that if this were true, they would have been taught it. If this were important, they would have been taught it. So they immediately dismiss it as false because they weren't taught it in medical school. And this cycle just keeps repeating itself. So until people like me who have seen the other side go back and start to educate the youth, this cycle is just going to perpetuate itself.
Well, it has to be taught by the professors in the classes too, right?
It does. So where are they getting their education, right? Because when they were educated, people weren't talking about this. And so they have that same perception that if it were true, if it were important, I would have learned it. I didn't learn it. It's neither true nor important.
Well, I think it goes back to who funds the medical textbooks as well.
Well, that's absolutely true. So I was in conversations with a hospital, and they wanted me to come on and be their chief of integrative oncology. And I said, great. What are we going to do about the cafeteria? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you can't have people have their colon removed and offer them eggs and bacon and pancakes for breakfast the next day. Like we have a great opportunity for people to learn how to take care of themselves. And the answer to me was that if the food in the cafeteria is too healthy, people give lower rating scores to their hospital stay, and the hospital's not willing to do that.
Whoa.
Okay, let's take that off of the table and let's reframe it and think about the greater good. So you have someone that comes in with a heart attack and you're able to reverse them with a drug, or they get a cardiac cath and they're able to get an angioplasty or a stent or something like that. Like, you have a teachable moment there. Why don't we capitalize on that and teach them how to live so that they don't have a next cardiac event? And the response I got was, but we need them to have the next cardiac event because that's how we get paid. So the way that our system is designed is to reward sickness. And so there is absolutely no motivation for doctors, for hospitals, for pharmaceutical companies to teach people how to be well. And
Right.
so they don't.
Right. And it's sad.
And
It's so
it's
sad.
sad.
And if you
It's
look
sad.
at if you look at the studies, there's some really interesting studies and reporting that's been done that, some medical schools, many medical schools actually rely a pretty substantial portion of their entire budget from funding from pharmaceutical companies, right? So that's a medical school. Now, on top of it, the actual funding of the medical literature, the textbooks that are given to the professors to teach from, are the writers and the editors of them rely substantially on pharmaceutical money to pay them to actually write these textbooks. So if we go back to understand why pharmacology is really one of the main focuses in medical school, right? And not nutrition, not diet, not lifestyle, not functional medicine, go back and
6 months on pharmacology.
follow the money, right? Follow the
6 months
money.
on pharmacology, 1 week on nutrition.
And it was nutrition that was for scurvy that we know all you need to do is eat some more
Have some
lemons
vitamin C, right? Eat an orange.
eat some lemons and limes, orange,
Yeah.
and you're fine, right? Like, it's not like all of this nutrition we're going to talk about here that
Yeah.
actually can help your body heal from diseases like cancer. So we know that, and it's sad, and that needs to change. And I want to honor and respect you for, shifting yourself out of that against all odds, right? And getting into more functional medicine approach. Now, with your own autoimmune disease, what did you change in your life, and did you heal that, or are you still dealing with it?
So I think anyone with autoimmune disease, we're always walking the line, right? So I live super duper duper clean. I didn't know what that meant before. I learned what that meant. And listen, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So I am a former sugar addict. Hello, my name is Jen, and I'm a sugar addict, right? And I'm not always perfect, but I have to always be pretty good. So right now I have no symptoms, and by the grace of God, I hope that it continues that way, but that, I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. It gets easier, and I just know that this is where I live, right? But I think that healing is possible for everyone, but that path to healing is different for everyone. So it is entirely dependent on what your triggers are, what led to your dysfunction. And so for everyone, that's really different. And I had to do a lot of work on, I had to do a lot of spiritual work. I had to do a lot of stress work. I had to, really change the narrative in my head from you have to be perfect all the time, you have to be on the go all the time, to allow myself to have some rest, to have some relaxation, to have some appreciation, to enjoy the small moments. And so I really had a lot of realigning to do in my life in order to get well. And again, I'm not going to tell you that I don't go through periods where I'm working too much or I'm doing too much, because that happens. And then I notice the shifts in my body, and I make the changes that are necessary to make. But it's about creating an awareness around yourself and really trusting yourself and being your own best doctor.
What a great discussion with Dr. Jen Simmons. Not only did she share what she was able to learn after 17 years of practicing medicine as a top breast cancer surgeon, but she laid out a foundation of many of the important areas we're going to dive into throughout this entire docuseries. Next up, we have Dr. Peter Glidden, who's an outspoken advocate of holistic health. He received his doctoral degree in naturopathic medicine in 1991 from Bastyr University of Naturopathic Medicine in Seattle, Washington. For over 2 decades, Dr. Glidden has been treating people with naturopathic therapeutics, including homeopathy, heavy metal chelation, herbal medicine, and bioidentical hormone supplementation. In addition to maintaining a private naturopathic practice, Dr. Glidden is a lecturer and highly sought after speaker on many health talk programs. In this next clip, Dr. Glidden shares some important history on the allopathic medical model, which many people aren't aware of today. And you'll learn about a key decision made over 100 years ago that still impacts the type of medical care that most people are able to access today. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Glidden. I'd like to dive right into what I know is going to be a really interesting discussion. You are a naturopathic physician, which is a type of medicine that not everyone watching this docuseries will be familiar with. From your perspective, what do you see as the biggest differences between the naturopathic approach and the conventional medical approach when it comes to preventing and treating cancer?
Well, it's the same differences that we see applied to any chronic illness or even any acute illness, quite frankly. It doesn't matter if it's cancer or asthma or arthritis or high blood pressure or congestive heart failure or depression or anxiety, infertility, doesn't matter. The philosophy of a system of medicine is extremely important. And I mean, let's be honest, I'm a holist, so I like to put everything in perspective and try to get to the root and start from the beginning. So if you could indulge me a little bit here, I think it would be easier for the listening audience. So first things first, in 1912, Congress granted the American Medical Association exclusive control over who could and who couldn't practice medicine here in the United States. And that was done through the influence of the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, who had skin in that game. So for 108 years now, we have lived inside of a medical monopoly which is so vast and overwhelming that most people are not even aware that it exists. Most people have no idea that we don't have a free medical market, but that's simply the fact of the matter. Now, the medical doctors and the pharmaceutical industry have been in exclusive control over the development and delivery of medicine here in the United States, and quite frankly, all industrialized nations since 1912. And listen, thank God for the surgery when it's necessary. Thank God for the sterile technique and insulin, right? A handful of antibiotics. There's a room in the world for that. However, MDs, your medical doctor may be the nicest person that God ever created, but your medical doctor doesn't practice medicine. Your medical doctor practices allopathic medicine. Medicine is like a big umbrella under which many different disciplines hang, right? There's naturopathic medicine, what I do, homeopathic medicine, chiropractic medicine, acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicine, the oldest system of medicine on planet Earth, and what the MDs practice, allopathic medicine. And they're all different in their philosophies, in their treatment strategies, and quite frankly, in their clinical outcomes. But because of the medical monopoly, most people in the United States and Canada are completely unaware of these distinctions. We have been socialized to believe that the MDs hold the secret decoder ring to all things medical, and everybody else is kind of a back of the bus, MD wannabe, alternative medicine, quack, for lack of a better word. This is the socialization that's been present for over 108 years. And this is the single biggest problem with the delivery of medicine in the 21st century, whether it's regarding cancer or anything else. Lack of a free medical market. We haven't had a free medical market again for 108 years. Now, the MDs, bless their hearts, practicing allopathic medicine, bring to the table a really interesting philosophy of treatment and philosophy of medicine. Allopathic medicine is based on reductionism, which is based on Newtonian physics. So according to reductionism, which MDs are trained in, if it can't be measured, it doesn't exist. So since nobody's ever dissected the soul out of a human body, nor seen it with an MRI or a CT scan or an ultrasound, it doesn't exist. So to the allopathically trained MD, who is in the monopoly right now, who owns the monopoly. The human body is a bag of biochemicals waiting to break. Consciousness itself is a function of biochemistry. And in this worldview, when the death happens, it's lights out, game over. There's no such thing as life after death. Consciousness doesn't exist as separate and distinct from the human body. There's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as heaven. All things metaphysical are a fiction. And this is the philosophy which informs all types of treatment, especially the treatment of cancer, because the MD is trained to believe, again, the body's a bag of biochemicals waiting to break. And when it does break, it's the doctor's job, the MD's job, to manage the symptoms. Now, this is a really interesting aha moment for most people when they think it through like this, right? Think about it. Of all of the illnesses which plague humanity right now, medical doctors do not have a cure for chronic health conditions. High blood pressure isn't cured, it's managed. Heart disease isn't cured, it's managed. Depression isn't cured, it's managed. The only thing that conventionally trained allopathic MDs can cure are bacterial infections. And with antibiotics, and those are even starting to fail now with the rise of antibiotic resistant bacterial infections. So allopathic medicine is really, really good for trauma care, surgery when it's necessary, and a handful of infectious diseases, because that's the epitome of reductionism. Oh, you have a bullet in your arm, heaven forbid. You know, a reductionist can surgically remove that and keep you from not dying from a secondary infection. It's a beautiful thing. And this is also why the major advances in medicine in the 21st century have been in the field of surgery. But when it comes to chronic disease and cancer, it's an abject failure. And, you know, again, you're welcome to your own opinion, but not your own set of facts. In the United States of America, Alzheimer's is accelerating rapidly. Autism is accelerating rapidly. Conservative estimates say that by the year 2030, 1 out of every 2 children in the United States will be autistic. Life expectancy is getting shorter. Arthritis is increasing. Type 2 diabetes is increasing. 1/3 of the adult and childhood population are not just overweight, they're obese. The leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, medical bills. Well, why is this? Because what's the most expensive type of medicine? It's the one that doesn't attempt to cure anything. Now, you know, again, we need to keep everything in perspective. Surgery, when it's necessary, is really great. Trauma care, really great. Thank God for insulin, a handful of antibiotics, right? But while we have existed inside of the medical monopoly, chronic disease is accelerating. And it's not because of chemtrails. It's not because of 5G cell phone radiation. It's because the only system of medicine which is allowed to in this case, to treat cancer is MD-directed pharmaceutical centrist allopathic medicine, because of the medical monopoly, which most people aren't even aware exists. I mean, for goodness sakes, my last little tidbit here. Your medical doctor, your MD, may be the nicest person that God ever created, but they don't know what's best for you. They only know what they've been trained in.
Yeah, I agree with you that there are a lot of great services that a medical doctor can provide. You know, if I get in a car wreck or I fall and break my leg or, God forbid, I get hit by a bullet, then I definitely want to go to the hospital and get treated by a medical doctor, no question about it. But, you know, when it comes to chronic diseases like cancer, just as you're talking about, the typical allopathic medical approach isn't about nutrition or prevention. The usual approach is to look at cancer as some kind of invading enemy that they have to get out of you as fast as possible. They have to cut it out, radiate it, kill it by flooding your body with powerful chemotherapy drugs, for example. Or a more holistic approach isn't necessarily about getting the cancer out of you no matter what the collateral damage is. It's looking at the why the cancer showed up in the first place and making the body inhospitable to cancer by eliminating the causes and then implementing solutions that leave the body stronger than it was before. In other words, doing things that strengthen the immune system so that the body's able to eliminate cancer on its own.
Couldn't agree more. And, you know, that's the adult perspective. That's the sophisticated, open-minded perspective. But the problem that exists in the education and the professional career of doctors, especially MDs, the education, the medical education of an allopathic doctor is such a meat grinder that when students come out of that meat grinder and they enter into their professional life, they are of the opinion that if they weren't taught it in medical school, it simply isn't valid. It's an extremely closed-minded way of looking at the world, and that's the intention of the educational process. It's the intention of any doctoral degree granting process, is to get the people who have the degree, who secure the degree, to think alike, to think inside of these parameters. And if you go outside of the parameters, well, that's, you know, that's verboten. That's not a good idea. So what myself and my colleagues have experienced for decades now is an extreme amount of cognitive dissonance. And I can't tell you how many times we've all treated patients who were suffering with a chronic disease, maybe cancer, maybe arthritis, maybe high blood pressure, something that conventional medicine has failed. The conventional medicine treatment strategy has failed them. And so as a last resort, which is regretfully what happens most in the United States, people come to our offices, and then we get people on a health recovery program, and more often than not, they recover their health and the chronic health condition disappears. And then they'll go back to their medical doctor who had been treating them unsuccessfully for 5-10 years. They're completely better now. And the medical doctor doesn't want to know what they did to get on the other side of their health. Doesn't want to call me up, doesn't want to call my colleagues up, say, oh my God, I can't believe it. This person had high blood pressure that was out of control. You know, I tried to fix it for 5 years and you took care of it in 3 months. What'd you do? You would think that would be, you know, the human thing to do. But the 1 billion pound gorilla is sitting on the middle of planet Earth right now, that what we all need to become aware of right now is that most medical doctors, there are exceptions to this rule, but most medical doctors have so much cognitive dissonance that even when their therapeutics fail, even when their therapeutics harm, even when their therapeutics bankrupt their patients, instead of looking in the mirror and dissecting their own therapeutics for looking for something better to do, maybe we're on the wrong road here. Cognitive dissonance disallows that, and they continue to plod forward with expensive, ineffective treatments. And this is the biggest problem. When you marry cognitive dissonance with a 108-year-old medical monopoly, it's a recipe for disaster. And that's why we have such horrible outcomes with cancer.
So I just want to add one bit to all that you just spoke so eloquently about. It's to, you know, recognize that the tiny percent of medical doctors who do start questioning the results of their therapies, those who are willing to reach out to other healthcare professionals like naturopaths and homeopaths and Ayurvedic practitioners and say, hey, you know, what'd you do? I couldn't do anything for that patient. The docs that actually do start researching and going beyond what they were taught in medical school and are open to using what actually works. You know, I've interviewed many of these doctors who've gone on to open integrative clinics where they're implementing other modalities such as nutrition and naturopathy, Ayurvedic and homeopathic medicine into their practices while keeping the best aspects of allopathic medicine. We need more doctors waking up, asking these questions, and then going into more of an integrative approach because they're getting such better results for their patients.
Well, I agree with you halfway, right? But I would argue that that's not what we need, that what we need, because there are thousands of naturopathic professionals, homeopathic professionals, Ayurvedic professionals all around the world. All we need is a seat at the table.
Yeah.
what's necessary here is not to train more medical doctors in how to use naturopathic therapeutics in their clinic. What we need is a free medical market. I mean, people would not be okay if in the United States of America, the only people that could sell cars was Ford Motor Company. People would not be okay with that. The only people that can sell beer is Budweiser. People would not be okay with that because that's a monopoly.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Just look at what happened to AT&T. So this is the most important thing that I can communicate here. And whether we're talking about cancer or anything else, inside of a free medical market, the public gravitates towards what works because it's a free medical market. We haven't had a free medical market. You know, in order to become a licensed naturopathic doctor in the US, it's 4 years pre-med, the same requirements as MDs have, 4 years of a naturopathic medical school, fully accredited by the United States Department of Education. Same hours of anatomy and physiology and histopathology and the diagnosis of disease that MDs get. Continuing education credits are the same. Have to pass national boards, have to pass state boards. It's full-blown primary care, licensed and regulated medicine, but it's only legal. It's only legal in 22 states in the United States. What does that mean, that the laws of nature or science change when you cross a state line? No. It's a turf war. Follow the money, baby. It's got nothing to do with anything other than maintaining the power grab. And this is the most important thing because, you know, Ayurvedic doctors have a very unique and successful understanding and methodology of treatment for cancer. Homeopathic doctors have a very interesting, sophisticated, and effective understanding and treatment of cancer. Naturopathic doctors have a very interesting, effective philosophy, understanding, strategy, and treatment of cancer. They're all slightly different. They all work, but people don't have access to them. Insurance doesn't cover it. You can see a naturopathic doctor, for instance, in Canada, but your Health Canada insurance doesn't pay for it. So when people want to find a holistic practitioner that's licensed and regulated, that actually knows what they're doing, either they can't afford it or it's illegal. And that's what needs to change. For instance, most people are completely unaware that in the United States of America, the only thing that can legally treat a disease is a drug, which is crazy, which is why when you go to a health food store and you read on the supplement, it will say bone and joint health instead of arthritis. It will say blood sugar support instead of type 2 diabetes. Why? Because it's illegal in the United States for anything but a drug to treat a disease. Well, who made that law? Well, the AMA passed that law. The AMA was responsible for that. They glad-handed Congress with the help of the Carnegies and the Rockefellers 108 years ago. Well, should that still be in place? No, it shouldn't be. It's egregious that laws like this are still in place. And I cannot emphasize this point enough. And I sound like I'm beating an old horse, but remember, beating a dead horse. I'm a holist. So I like to get to the root cause of all things. If you want to increase your chances of recovering from cancer or not getting cancer in the first place or recovering from it, then we need a free medical market. We need equal access to all licensed and regulated, science-based, clinically verified forms of medicine, and that has been absent for 108 years.
You know, I applaud Dr. Glidden's passion for wanting to expand the licensed and regulated medical options available to all of us, whether it's for treating cancer or other chronic conditions. Finding a qualified healthcare practitioner that you trust and feel comfortable with to help guide you along your healing journey is so important. In our next interview, you'll meet the man whose research is the foundation for something called the new biology, which has revolutionized the way that many healthcare practitioners think about how cancer and other diseases are created in the body. One of the most common things I hear from people is that they're worried they're going to get cancer because their mom or dad, a grandparent, or even a sibling had cancer. But should you worry about cancer being hereditary or that you've got the so-called cancer gene? Bruce Lipton is an internationally recognized leader in bridging science and spirit. He's a stem cell biologist and best-selling author of an amazing book called The Biology of Belief. Dr. Lipton began his scientific career as a cell biologist. He received his PhD from the University of Virginia at Charlottesville before joining the Department of Anatomy at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine in 1973. I'm honored to call Bruce a friend, and he's been instrumental over the years in the work I do helping people with cancer. In this incredible discussion with Dr. Lipton, he explains the role that your genetics actually play in the likelihood of you getting cancer. Just as importantly, you'll learn how your thoughts and emotions and the beliefs you were raised with factor into the cancer equation. So Bruce, thank you so much for being here.
Nathan, I want to thank you so very much because I know your work is so profoundly important in helping our planet evolve, taking us from the view of being victims of the world to really recognizing we are powerful creators of our life and our life experiences. And so thank you for this opportunity to help empower our audience.
Absolutely. It's the one thing I love about your message always is it's about taking back control of ourselves, taking power over our lives instead of being victims. That's exactly what we're going to do here today is help empower people. So, I personally own and love all of your books. I've read all of them. My favorite book of yours is, especially for today's topic, is The Biology of Belief. In The Biology of Belief, I want to read a paragraph here because this is really going to set the frame, I think, for our conversation today. So in The Biology of Belief, you write, unfortunately, we conveniently forgot about the cooperation necessary for evolution when Charles Darwin emphasized a radically different theory about the emergence of life. He concluded 150 years ago that living organisms are perpetually embroiled in a struggle for existence. For Darwin, struggle and violence are not only a part of human nature, but the principal forces behind evolutionary advancement. Darwin wrote of an inevitable struggle for life and that evolution was driven by the war of nature from famine and death. Couple that with Darwin's notion that evolution is random, and you have a world, as poetically described by Tennyson, that can be characterized as red in tooth and claw, a series of meaningless, bloody battles for survival. This description, Bruce, about human life that Darwin writes about has informed, I believe, much of our conventional medical approach to cancer and other chronic diseases that we see today. And so I want to ask you, can you speak a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, because most of the world is still locked up in the belief system that was really propagated in that theory. And I go, so what is the emphasis of the theory? And the emphasis was, even though Darwin didn't know about genes, he knew about heredity. And he said that heredity controls the character of our lives. And I go, well, that was interesting. That was before we even knew what genes were. But then that sent science on a mission. They said, well, if heredity is controlling characteristics, which include cancer, then basically if we understand heredity and how it works, then we'll get at the root of where cancer comes from. So they were pre-directed to say, let's find what controls life. And in 1944, that was the first year that a scientific assessment revealed that DNA was the essentially programmed part of our lives. By 1953, that's when the DNA double helix came into our world. And it fit the story at the time that DNA was controlling us. And that's when we got into the belief that genes control the character of our lives. And this is a story that's been propagated. And I say, well, what is the deep meaning of that? Because I was teaching that 50 years ago. I was teaching medical students something called genetic determinism. I said, what is that? Well, that was a scientific belief that genes determine the character of our lives, that genes turn on and off, and in the process create our biology and our behavior. And I go, well, that was a really cool idea, except for the fact it turns out, well, that's not really true. And I say, but what is the meaning of it when we teach it? Well, the meaning is this. As far as you know, you didn't pick the genes you came with. If If you don't like the characteristics, you can't change the genes. And then add on top of that, that we're told the genes turn on and off by themselves. And I go, well, then in that case, then my life is not under my control. It's under the control of my genes. And I go, well, then that makes you a victim. And this is what people walk away with. Oh, I have cancer. I have diabetes. I have heart condition. Oh, it's running in the family and the genes are manifesting this. So everyone walks away as a victim of heredity. Yeah, cancer especially. The cancer gene is in my family. I could get the cancer. I'll walk down the street and one afternoon the gene will just say, turn on. And then I end up with cancer. It's like, I'm a victim. Well, that's the conventional belief system. But a number of years ago, I had a unique opportunity to see another insight into the nature of genetics. And that insight is today the new science called epigenetics. And people go, what? Epigenetics, genetics, it all sounds the same to me. And I go, no, here's what the difference is. As I mentioned, let's say cancer is under genetic control. And what that really is interpreted meaning is there's a cancer gene that turns on and gives you cancer, okay? And I say, what does that have to do with you? And I say, well, you're just a carrier of the gene and cancer is in your life right there. So again, I'm a victim of, there's breast cancer gene running in my family. Okay. I go, well, that would be very interesting if it was true. But the fact is, it's not true at all. And I say, well, what is that? I said, because the idea that genes turn on and off by themselves is a complete fabrication. It's not true at all. A gene is a blueprint to make the proteins, which are the physical body parts when you assemble them, okay? It's like one of those kits where you can assemble pieces and make stuff, you know? And I go, we have 100,000 different genes and all the different cells in our body are combinations of these genes, a muscle cell, a bone cell, a skin cell. They're all based on the proteins that the genes are blueprints for to make those cells. I go, so what? I go, a gene is a blueprint to make the proteins. I go, yeah. And I go into an architect's office and she's working on a blueprint and just for fun say, hey, is your blueprint on or off? She look at you, what are you talking about? It's a blueprint. There's no on and off. It's a blueprint. I go, precisely. A gene is a blueprint. It cannot turn itself on and off. The whole belief that genes have the ability to self-actualize, meaning they can control their behavior, they can control when they go on and off and all that. And I go, 100% false. Genes are blueprints. Epigenetics now reveals that a gene can be read as a blueprint. And I go, yeah, that's how you read a gene. I go, does a gene read itself? I go, no. I said, well, then who selects the genes? I go, our consciousness, our mind, and there's subconscious and conscious levels and all that. And I go, it's how we respond to the world that activates the genes. The new science is called epigenetics. And I go, let's say, old story, cancer is under genetic control, meaning genes control cancer. Now I say, cancer is associated with epigenetic control. I go, what does that mean? I say, there's no gene that causes cancer. It's how you respond to the world and how you influence the genes. And I go, we influence the genes? I go, epigenetics means this. Epi means above. What do I call skin? Epidermis. I go, why is that relevant? Well, just underneath the layer of skin is a layer called dermis. And I say, so what's above the layer? Epidermis. I go, why? Because epi means above. So when I say this program is under epigenetic control, it means this program is under control from above, not in the genes, above the genes, epigenetics. And I go, well, what's that? And I say, it's the environment, and more importantly, our perception of the environment is sending signals that select which genes are going to be read. And more importantly, the way we perceive the world, we can change the readout of our blueprints. Just like an architect, I can change the blueprint from the same gene blueprint, which is a blueprint to make a protein. I actually can make over 3,000 different versions of proteins from the same blueprint. I say, how can you do that? And the answer is epigenetics is like a scissor and tape. Take the blueprint, cut it into pieces, tape it together in a different sequence, and you get a different protein. And so it's like, oh, not only do we select the genes that are going to be activated, but we can change the readout of the gene that's going to be activated. I say, well, who's changing the readout? I say, how we are dealing with the world. Our perception of the environment is used to adjust our genetics so that our biology can thrive in an environment that's always changing, because the genes have to always adapt. And I say the genes don't adapt. It's epigenetics. It's your consciousness. And I go, well, why is this relevant? I say, what's the conventional belief about oncology today? There are oncogenes, genes that cause cancer. I go, there is no gene, this is a fact, there's no gene that causes cancer. There are genes that are correlated with cancer. I say, what's the difference? I say, causation means the act or agency which activates something, causes. Correlated means something is associated with it. I say, oncogenes do not cause cancer, they're associated with cancer. And I go, so why is it relevant? I say, well, look at the people, especially the women, of course, in this case of the BRCA breast cancer gene, and they find they have the gene, and the first thing is like, oh my God, I could get the cancer, I got the gene. And I go, does the gene cause cancer? I go, well, 50% of the women that have the BRCA gene do not get the cancer. I say, so why is it relevant? I say, having the gene does not cause cancer.
Right.
Having the gene is correlated with cancer. I say, so what's the correlation? I say, a disharmony in the system is what provokes the diseases. As a matter of fact, we always talk about genes cause all the diseases. Here, scientific fact, less than 1% of disease is connected to genes. Less than 1%. I said, well, where's all the disease coming from? 90% of disease is now recognized to be due to stress, a breakdown of the community of your cells. We look at ourselves as a single entity, and I go, no, a human body is made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. Bruce, oh, that's the word for a community of 50 trillion cells that you're looking at right here, community. I go, what's relevant? When there's harmony, the cell and community is healthy. When there's disharmony, the cells express disease. And all of a sudden I say then, oh, the genes didn't cause the problems like cardiovascular issues or cancer. It's not caused by a gene. It's caused by a problem in your perception of the world that is causing disharmony. And it's a program. I say, and consciousness controls this. I go, yeah, but then I have to say, that's now we step back. And I go, but there's two sources of consciousness in your brain. One is called the conscious mind, which is the latest evolution of the brain, a lobe of tissue right behind your forehead called prefrontal cortex. This is the seat of the conscious mind. You go, what's the conscious mind? It's the one connected to your personal identity. It's the one connected to your spiritual source. It's you and nobody else. And I say, and what's the function of the conscious mind? It's creative. That's what does it have? Wishes and desires. That's what we have with the creative mind. And I go, okay, what's the other mind? I go, oh, that's called the subconscious mind. I go, what's that? I say, it's programs. There's nobody in there. It's a hard drive. And I go, so why do we have a subconscious mind? Then I step back and give you a very important fact. The brain is the most advanced computer that humans have ever experienced or know about in this world. There's no computer that can match this. And I go, but it is a computer. Fact. I go, so why is it relevant? And I say, there's functionally the equivalent of a silicon-based computer that you might be using now to watch this program or watching a movie or whatever. And I go, so why is it relevant? And I said, go to the store, let's buy a brand new computer right now. And you bring it home and I say, push start. And it boots up, the screen lights up. And I go, okay, now let's do something. Let's write an essay or let's make a drawing or a spreadsheet. And I say, I can't do it. I say, you just got a brand new computer. What are you talking about? I say, not until I put programs in the computer can I use that computer. I go, so programs? I say, well, yeah. It turns out the subconscious is the equivalent of a hard drive with programs in it. I say, oh yeah? I said, well, when did you get the programs? I go, in the last trimester of pregnancy, the brain boots up, screen's on, brain screen's going. I say, yeah, but can you do anything? I say, no, why not? I said, just like a brand new computer. If I don't have a program, I can't use it. So for the first 7 years of your life, your conscious brain, wishes and desires, that's not working yet. First 7 years, your subconscious is downloading programs of how to behave. I say, where do the programs come from? And I go, in that first 7 years, your brain activity is in a vibration called theta. And when I talk about vibration, I'm talking about you put wires on a person's head, read their brain consciousness. It's called electroencephalograph, EEG. And I go, so what? And I say, well, in the first 7 years, the vibration of the brain is not at the level of consciousness. A child up and through age 7 is predominantly in a vibration called theta. I go, what's theta? I said, well, it's characterized by imagination. That's how children mix the real world and the imaginary world. Let's have a tea party. They pour nothing into the cup. They drink the nothing, and then they talk about that was the best tea I ever had. And I go, that's mixing imagination with reality. That is theta, okay? But theta is hypnosis. I go, hypnosis? I go, yeah. I said, what do you need it for? I said, that's how you download the programs to get the computer off the ground. I say, how do you download it? I say, observe, just like a video recorder. In hypnosis theta, whatever I observe is the downloaded program. I say, well, who are you observing? Mother, father, siblings, community. I go, what kind of programs you get? You ready? Programs of how to be an effective member of a community, how to be an effective member of a society, a family. I say, how do you get those programs? I say, you watch your mother, download her behavior. Watch your father, download his behavior. Watch a community, download their behavior. And I go, why is it relevant? A kid has to conform to the culture and society they live in. And there are rules, as we all know, thousands of rules. I say, so how is an infant going to learn 1,000 rules? You're going to give them a textbook and say, hey, listen, read this book and we'll come back and talk about it. I go, no. The evolution created a download period for the first 7 years where the brain is not consciously creating, but it is absorbing behaviors by observing others and making programs. So your fundamental programs in your mind, in the subconscious, they didn't come from you. They came from other people. So the programs, do they necessarily support your wishes and desires? That's conscious mind. I say, no, it's their wishes and desires or their programming. So all of a sudden I say, well, then the fundamental programs that you have in your mind that are creating this body didn't come from you. They came from other people. And if they have a problem in their life, so do you, because you just downloaded their behavior, okay? And everyone says, well, genes are controlling this. And I go, little story about cancer. They followed the fate of children adopted into families where there was a cancer running in the family lineage. And what did they find? The adopted child will get the same family cancer with the same probability as any of the natural siblings. But the adopted child came from completely different genetics. I say, so why was it relevant? The child is expressing a cancer, not because of the genetics they came into the family with. They're expressing a cancer because the programming that occurred in that first 7 years of that child's life was a state of disharmony, not support, living out of balance, whatever those programs they downloaded. And I say, so why is it relevant? The cancer in these kids didn't come from their own genes. It came from the programming they got. And this is epigenetics. The mind is adjusting the genes of the body. And I say, so why is it relevant? I say, well, that's where we come back to two minds. The conscious mind is creative, wishes and desires. Do you think you were wishing to make a cancer? I say, no. And I go, why? I say, it's not from the creative mind that cancer came from. It comes from the program in the subconscious mind that you downloaded from other people. I said, why should I play the damn program? Why don't I just create my life and have fun? I go, and this is the monkey wrench in the machine. So this is the big box that needs to like pay attention, big box. And the point is this, is that the conscious mind is creative. Yes, it has wishes and desires, okay? But the conscious mind can think. And you go, what the heck does that mean? Well, when the conscious mind is paying attention to the world, it's looking out your windows like the windshield of a car. You can see where you're going, you see what's going on. You have a choice to turn left, right? You got choices, okay? But when the conscious mind is thinking, it's not looking out the window anymore because thinking is inside. I go, so if I'm driving down the street in my car and I'm paying attention to where I'm going and everything, and then I start thinking, I say, then I'm not paying attention to the road because my conscious mind just went in to have a thought inside. I said, oh, I'm in trouble. I go, no, subconscious mind is autopilot. When the conscious mind is thinking, the subconscious mind takes over the control. The subconscious mind knows how to drive. It's a program. The subconscious mind knows how to talk, how to do your job. Anything that we have created habits, the subconscious mind's a habit mind.
Right. It's not just program the first 7 years. It's the other way we program the subconscious mind is by repetition, right? Doing something.
That after age 6,
Yep.
after age 7, excuse me.
Yep.
The first 7 years is hypnosis. But you still learn things. You learn how to drive a car after age 7. I say, how did you learn those programs? I say, after age 7, we learn programs by repetition, as you just brought up. Practice. You want to drive a car? Practice. You want to play a musical instrument? Practice. You want to learn a new thing? Practice. And I say, through practice, we create programs. And once the program is in there, it's automatic behavior. And they're really good. A lot of people think, oh, the subconscious is where all the evil is. And I go, hey, no, the subconscious is programs. Don't blame the hard drive. It's the programs that are the problem. And it's really important because the programs are what are running your life 95% of the day. If you have an accurate program and live in harmony with life, you're going to be healthy. But if you have a dysfunctional program that puts stress on your life, then automatically you're opened up for illness. And I say, so 95% of life is not coming from the wishes, desires, creative, conscious mind. 95% of your life is coming from the programs that you downloaded from other people. So these are not programs that answer your wishes and desires. And if you downloaded dysfunctional programs, then you have a dysfunctional life because 95% of your life is coming from that. So a very simple conclusion from a guy who's making million words here. The simple conclusion is this, is that you are not controlling your life with your wishes and desires. 95% of your life is coming from the programs which you got from other people. And if those programs do not support you, support your vitality, your health, and all that, and you're playing negative programs 95% of the day, then guess what? You are causing a breakdown of the system. The cells are like miniature people. You got 50 trillion citizens living inside your body, and your mind is a government. And if you have a government that says, you're evil, you're bad, you're not good, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what do you think 50 trillion cells are going to respond to? It's like, ooh.
Well, from a biochemical and neurological point of view, if you're looking at the world through this Darwinian perspective, right? Or this, we're brought up in a family that is quite dysfunctional, abusive, the world's against us, it's money doesn't grow on trees, whatever stressors that we were raised upon, right?
Yes.
Fend for yourself and all these things. Then,
and the other one is like some of the program that a lot of us get is, who do you think you are? You don't deserve this. You're not that good at this. These are criticisms that parents lay on the kids as they're developing. And I say, why? Because the parents are acting like a coach on a team. Yeah. If the player isn't doing well, the coach says, come on. The coach will say, oh, please do better. The coach says, that's not good enough. You can do better. You don't deserve to be on this team. But a player on a team is generally older than 7. And I say, why? Because now they're thinking and they understand that the coach is saying, hey, you want to stay on the team? Work harder. That's what you need to do.
So can you talk a little bit about what that actually does, that subconscious programming that I think everybody, we could pretty much assume, just about everybody has some negative subconscious programming, one or multiple programs, right?
Multiple.
When we're living that way, what is that doing at a biochemical level, at a cellular genetic level that is leading to things like cancer and chronic disease in the body?
So a brief recap on the understanding of genes are controlled by the environment. I say, what is the environment of the cells? The blood. Cells live in a body. It's like an aquarium. You cut yourself and the blood leaks out. That's the fluid. And I say, oh, so the environment for a cell is the equivalent of the blood. I go, yeah. But epigenetics says the environment controls the genetics. I go, well, how does that work? I say, the chemistry of the blood determines the fate of the cell. That's bottom line. I say, but then who controls the chemistry? I go, the brain controls the chemistry. That's the chemist. I go, now comes the most important piece. And it's like, so what chemicals should a brain be putting into the blood that influences the growth and vitality of cells? I go, the brain translates the picture in your mind into complementary chemistry. It's like paint by numbers in reverse. Here's the whole picture, and the mind breaks it up into different pieces of colors and said, oh, the colors are hormones or emotional chemicals or things like that. And I say, so the brain sees a picture, translates it into chemistry, releases that into the blood, and guess what? The body will then be designed to manifest that picture. Is it a picture of health and vitality and I'm super powerful? Or is it a picture of, oh, I'm a victim, I'm weak, I have no control over my life? I go, that's two different chemistries. And I say two different fates. And all of a sudden I say, oh, then genes did not control this. I go, no, the picture in your mind controls this. I say, what about cancer? I say, that's not in the conscious mind. Nobody's going around going, geez, I wish I had some cancer today. That's creative. I say, nobody does that. I say, then where the heck does the cancer come from? The subconscious. And I go, oh, programs that are actually taking you out of harmony? Yeah, I go like that. And I said, well, I would see if I was doing that. And then I tell the story that I've been saying for 30 years. I say, you have a friend and you know your friend's behavior. And you happen to know your friend's parent. And then one day you see that your friend has the same behavior as the parent. So you want to volunteer, you can't, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. I said, back away from Bill. The moment you say that, I know exactly what Bill's going to say. He's going to say, how can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. And everyone laughs because they've had that personal experience. I said, that's the most profound story I can tell you at this moment. I said, what is it? Everybody else can see that Bill's behavior is like his dad. The only one who can't see it is Bill. Explain it. I go, yes. Where did he get the behavior? He downloaded his dad's behavior in the first 7 years of life. Why can't he see that he's playing this behavior? Why is he playing this behavior? Answer, his conscious mind's not paying attention. It's thinking. I go, so what? And I say, well, that's when the subconscious steps in as autopilot. But if it's got a bad program, it's going to play it. And I say, will you see you're playing a bad program? I say, not really. Why? You're not paying attention. That's why you're playing the program. And so the idea is this. We are creating our lives not with our conscious wishes and desires mind. 95% of our life is coming from the program. And if there's cancer running in a family, guess what? It's not the genes. It's the behavior that precipitates a cancer that's running in the family.
And that behavior could, just to clarify, I mean, that behavior can be stress, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, all these things that are, we know, activating hormones in the body that are going to suppress the immune system and actually induce an environment that is supportive of chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation leads to cancer. We also, but other behaviors, right? Like, food behaviors, foods of taking in too many toxins and too much toxic material, which we know damages the DNA, right? And food that's not nutritious enough, and we know that's not giving our cells the nutrients they need. So what you're talking about is not only thinking behavior, even though that's the primary focus of this. Are you also speaking about just cultural behavior in terms of lifestyle decisions that we're implementing as well that lead to cancer?
This is 100% true, Nathan. You realize this is like different countries have different kinds of cancers. That's a predominant version of cancer. I go, what, do they have different genes? I go, no, it's basically their culture emphasizes something different than the other culture emphasizes. And since culture is the environment and the environment is shaping biology, then two people genetically identical in two different cultures, take two identical people, move them in two different cultures, they're going to have totally different life expressions. It's also like, hey, identical twins are born with the exact same set of genes. And one of them could die of cancer when they're 50 and the other could live to 100. I go, well, how does that happen? The answer is they all have the same genes. And it's like, it's not the genes, it's the life experiences that are activating those genes that determine the outcome in the end. And so basically cancer is not living in harmony with your 50 trillion cell community. Whether the stressors are physical, emotional, or chemical stressors, any of these stressors can cause a disruption of the community. What's going on inside the body is actually a reflection of the same thing going on the outside of the body. We're in so disharmony outside that reflection on the inside via epigenetics, taking the vision and turning it inwards, is the primary cause of cancer. As I said, there's no gene that causes cancer. Genes are correlated with cancer. And then the problem is, well, our old belief, Darwinian, Genes create the character of our life. I've got cancer. Let's kill those cells because their genes are causing cancer. I go, no, the cells are just responding to the environment that you gave them. You can kill all the damn cancer cells you want, but if you didn't change the consciousness, there's going to be another wave of cancer coming from somewhere else or the same place because you didn't change what causes the cancer. The cancer cells, this is hard, but you got to hear it. The cancer is a symptom, not the problem. I go, why is it relevant? Well, cut out all the cancer cells. You cut out all the symptom. I go, you didn't change the problem. Problem's still there.
Cancer comes back.
It comes back. And that's the issue. If you don't want the cancer, you don't kill the damn cancer cells. You know what's interesting is our subconscious mind is programmed. Yes. I say the conventional program, is that when children grow up in a family, conventional family, if someone gets sick, where do they go? The doctor. I go, what does a child learn by age 7 when it comes to sick and ill?
They have no control. They have no control over their health, their life, nothing.
No. And who's the professional? The doctor. I say, why is it relevant? Because the doctor's truth becomes your truth.
Right.
I say, so why is it relevant? I said, consider a prognosis. A prognosis is telling you a future from a professional that you've given power to because the doctor knows. And I go, wow. So guess what? You get a diagnosis. You got 3 months left to live. And the idea is, what is your body doing? Well, 95% of the day it says that, yep, I got 3 months left to live. It's counting down. It will die in approximately 3 months, whether you had the cancer or not, if you bought the belief. And I go, you mean belief is controlling it? And I go, hey, it's 100 years of placebo. I said, what's placebo? I said, placebo is you have an illness. The doctor comes up and says, we've been fighting this illness a long time. It's not really working out really good, but guess what? Got a brand new drug, brand new for your illness. This is the drug. And the patient takes the drug and they get better, only to find out that the drug was a sugar pill. And I say, so tell me then, where did the healing come from? It didn't come from the sugar pill. It came from the belief in the sugar pill, the positive belief that this is the healing thing. I take it, I got well. I go, did the pill do that? I say, no, it was your belief that that's where I'm going. A placebo is a consequence of a positive belief. That's basically what it is. And everybody goes, oh yeah, I'm familiar with a placebo. And I go, but you're not paying attention to the fact is this. It's not just positive beliefs that influence us, negative beliefs influence. It's belief. And I say, what's the difference? I say, negative belief doesn't heal you. A negative belief can do everything. You can die from the belief that you're going to die. You can die, you can get a disease because you've been programmed to believe you're going to get that disease. Placebo is the consequence of a positive thought. Nocebo, the negative version, is a result of a negative thought. And they're equally powerful. And everyone talks about the placebo as a special thing. And I say, what about nocebo? And they go, what? Nocebo? I go, you didn't realize that your negative thinking is equally powerful in controlling your genetics as is positive thinking? And that the vast majority of our thinking, 70%, is negative, disempowering, limiting beliefs. I go, you have more negative beliefs than you have positive beliefs. What do you think the net result is going to be?
Well, and this is why we see today, right? Well, first, I just want to acknowledge how much wisdom you just shared in the last, short time we've been together. I mean, decades and decades of wisdom in such a condensed time. I think people may have to go back and listen to this once or twice to really digest. And I encourage you to listen to this a couple of times, again and again, because there's so much here that is so powerful that when you walk away understanding this at a deeper level, you realize that your health and your fate, for the most part, really is in your hands. You can control your destinies. You said genetic determinism. Our futures don't have to be determined by our genetics. And in fact, they're not. They're determined by our choices, but we have to understand the choices that are leading to the results that we're experiencing. Right.
But the important part is, how about if most of those choices are unconscious?
Yep.
That's where the problem comes from.
Yep.
Today, I'm going to get healthy. Today I'm going to get the great job. Today I'm going to find a relationship. I say that's my creative conscious mind with a wish and a desire. And I go out and I come home at 5 o'clock going, didn't happen today. I don't know why. I had all the positive thinking. And I go, the reason is your positive thinking is only working 5% of the time.
Yeah.
Your program is working 95% of the time. And like in the story of Bill, you play these programs and you don't even know you're doing it. You're sabotaging yourself because you have no reflective vision back that I was even involved. I came home at 5 o'clock, it didn't work. I go, how come? I wanted to have it work. And then all of a sudden, what does a person do? I'm a victim.
Right.
These people got in the way. This thing got in the way. That thing got in the way, which means I didn't have any power over this. I'm a victim.
So we have to reprogram our subconscious, and we want to talk a little bit more in a moment how to do that. And before we do, I want to say a couple of things briefly and ask you a couple important questions as well. Is one thing I've come to believe in not only learning from your work over the years, but 15 years in my own personal healing and health and spiritual journey, is that now I used to believe it was the opposite. Today I believe that 80% of our healing, our health, our vitality is in our mind, our consciousness, our thoughts. And 20% is the physical, the nutrition, the diet, the exercise, the other important pieces. 20% is really important, right? And this is not a scientifically verified number. I'm just basing on the 80-20 rule, where I used to think it was the opposite. And one of the reasons I confirm this belief for myself anyway, I'm not saying this is anybody else's belief, is that so many people who I've come to meet and speak with who have reversed stage 4 cancers, they were doing so many of the things right: the nutrition, the diet, the exercise, the sleep, a lot of the physical important things that are really important, but they were under stress. They were anxious. They had underlying fears, childhood traumas, things that they had never resolved. And when I ask them, I say, what do you really feel caused your cancer? Oh, it was this divorce. After we divorced, my husband killed himself, and I blame myself for that. Or my child was molested, and I blame myself for my child being molested by the babysitter that I hired that had no idea. Right? I mean, these are real stories again and again. And when I finally got to these traumas and healed these traumas, changed my subconscious thinking, healed my stress, became more, joyful, peaceful, happy, cancer went away. And it happened again and again and again. I'm not discrediting the importance of diet, nutrition, exercise. All these things are going to help your body significantly, right? But if you've got that underlying programming that is sabotaging you at a cellular level, at a genetic level, as we're talking about, right, that is creating an environment at a DNA level that is basically preventing your body from healing, then it may be very challenging to actually heal. So that's why I think this is 80% of the work. That's just my opinion.
Well, it's real important because the story you brought up is very important to me, because years ago I had a small group of people that came in because they wanted to hear where's the new science and stuff. And so we used to get together and talk about it. And one of the women, Mary, came in, and she had breast cancer, and then it went throughout her body, and then they gave her, oh, you're in a support group, and but it's not looking too good. And she came in with another friend from the support group, so both of them having the same issue, both of them in the same support group. Once I started to give them the understanding about how genes worked and that it was programming and all that, and she went over her life and said, yeah, I see it now, Mary. And she said, I gotta change my thoughts on all this stuff. And she did. And guess what? She went into remission. No cancer. Disappeared. The other woman said, yeah, that's a good idea, but never followed through and did anything. But her conscious mind heard the data, but her subconscious program was still the same program. And then I see them at a Christmas time when I'm driving in San Francisco, and they were going across the street, and Mary is pushing a woman in the wheelchair, her friend that she brought, who was on her last days of life. And Mary's out there Christmas, enjoying life and everything. And that was great. Then, just as you just said, Mary got her daughter was now connected with a neighbor to work for the neighbor and his job. Then she finds out that the neighbor was forcing himself on her daughter.
Mm.
And she got like, oh, what did I do? Guess what? She got breast cancer right after hearing that.
Wow.
And she died. And I go, what was the result of that? I said that as long as everything was cool and she healed herself, everything was great. But as soon as the fact that she put her daughter in harm's way and she took the guilt on, just as you just said, immediately the cancer came back and she died. I go, so what about the cancer? I said, when everything was cool and she figured it out and it all worked out and she felt good, the cancer disappeared. And all she needed was that bad news that came back in, and the cancer instantly came back and she lost her life.
Yeah.
Exactly what you just said.
Yeah, it's sad, and it's, you know, that's why this work is never ending, right? It's continual forever for the rest of our lives, and it's empowering work. I mean, I speak from experience that it is very empowering. We're going to have challenges, we're going to have traumatic experiences, we're going to have lost loved ones, but if we have the tools to help us through those, and actually how to transmutate that experience, right, instead of harbor it as resentment or guilt or fear or any of these things. Wow, Dr. Lipton is such an amazing researcher and speaker. You know, you've now got an understanding of just how important your beliefs and your subconscious programming is when it comes to preventing and healing from cancer. Now, if you want to learn how to reprogram your subconscious mind, heal emotional trauma, find that inner peace, and implement this new paradigm of cancer research and healing so your body can become a cancer-fighting fortress and bring peace to the parts of your life that hurt, make sure you watch episodes 3 and 4. In episode 4, you'll discover that healing emotional trauma and finding inner peace is actually very simple, easy, fast, pain-free, and incredibly powerful, and can accelerate your physical healing and rejuvenation. Also, if you want to learn the ultimate anti-cancer diet, as well as the simple and powerful lifestyle changes you can make quickly and easily to help your body heal, make sure you watch episodes 5, 6, and 7, all coming up over the coming days. And in the next 2 episodes, we're going to dive deep into some powerful healing tools with both Dr. Bruce Lipton and the other amazing experts to help you become the best version of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We've got so much more to come over the next 8 episodes, and you're not going to want to miss any of it. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care.
To my surprise, many of them were stage 4 on palliative therapy and basically sent home to die. And when their tumor started turning around and they went into remission after several months, I couldn't believe it. It was like, what? Why didn't they know about this at the university hospitals? Why wasn't anyone teaching this? And so what we're seeing is these estrogen mimetics. In fact, I have 3 patients. One has prostate cancer. His 2 buddies have prostate hyperplasia. They all play golf, and guess what they're all drinking all day long on the golf course? Out of plastic bottles.
My entire career of being in the medical industry, I dislike band-aiding. And what I mean by band-aiding, for those that may not understand the term, is giving someone something they have to take every month or they can't function. I like to fix the source problem. What we need to understand is 70% of immune function is tied to the gut bacteria. If we don't have the proper gut bacteria, again, like I said earlier, you're going to be functioning on 30% immune. Yes, you can live, but the problem is you're susceptible to a lot of things, and you don't have to be.
Well, we know for sure as we age, both our risk of obvious heart disease and sadly our risk of cancer both go up. So there's a lot of overlap in my patients with breast cancer, prostate cancer, other, common colorectal cancers, melanoma, of course, and some of the young people have it too, sadly. Is it accumulated toxins and environmental toxins? Is it genetics that just take time to alter our metabolism and lead to enough growth and enough cellular damage to show up as heart disease or cancer? All these are possible.
We can do so many things right, and if we're getting a couple things really, really wrong or really off, then all those amazing things that we're doing aren't going to work as well. And so it really is kind of like a puzzle. Like once we get enough pieces in place, then we can see the full picture. And that's really what we're looking for. If you can open up your belief that you can heal instantaneously, even with cancer, there's important medicine just in changing that belief. So we can upgrade our beliefs. We can upgrade our thought streams once we become aware of them. And we can actually do this consciously.